kind of going a little bit of a different direction here. We're going to give you 4 30-minute shows on different regions around the state. Along with Joshua Wilson of FloridaHSFootball.com, I'm Marty Pallman. This is the North Florida Blitz we start tonight, and Josh, looking forward to this. We're going to bring 30 minutes of news and highlights and all kinds of surprises around North Florida. We start with that tonight as it goes county all the way up to Georgia, Nassau County, Jacksonville, all the way to the Panhandle, Escambia County. We're going to cover North Florida here tonight, and a lot going on in North Florida high school football.
No, absolutely, and of course, a lot that has happened around here. Of course, we'll talk some of it about during the Blitz Lines, what's in the news, and then of course, we got a good interview tonight. I like this one. This guy has been around for a long time, been following him for years. Irish Bill Hammel.
Yes, a good friend of ours, a good friend of Florida HS football, and we've known him. I've known him from various baseball tournaments through the years. So yeah, I've known Bill a long time. Looking forward to having Irish Bill on. That'll be coming up in about 10 minutes. We will have Irish Bill with you at 7:40. But for now, as you said, Josh Wilson, I'm Marty Pallman, and we're going to start tonight kind of looking at the headlines around North Florida. And I guess the biggest, sorry.
Go ahead.
are the band. So really the big story last week came in Duval County, as it sometimes normally does in high school football in the North. How about Bowls? We talked about Bowls a couple weeks ago. They probably were going to be 0-3. Well, that happened. They lost to Coffee, Georgia the week before. But then we were looking at the game last week. They host Trinity Christian. Like, they're going to be 0-4. Nope, didn't happen. Bowls found a way to win. And a pretty good upset, actually, I would think, the way Bowls had been going, although Bowls had lost 3 close games. And that put Trinity Christian at 2-2. So quite a win for Matt Toblin. Bowls finally gets off the schneid against their big rival Trinity Christian.
No, absolutely. And of course, looking at it, Marty, I've got the cue for this for the
yes. Right. Breaking news.
No, absolutely. Breaking news, because you definitely mentioned Bowls there and Trinity Christian. I mean, that's definitely something there to talk about because, looking at it, I thought, Trinity Christian was favored to come into this game. Bowls was sitting there 0-3, thinking Bowls would go 0-4. Last time Bowls was 0-3 was in the 1980s. So, I mean, we're talking something right there.
It was 1967.
What?
The last time they'd been 0-2. Was 1980.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you for the correction there on that one.
Yeah, I mean, I heard that one too. I was really amazed. 1967 was the last time Bowls have been 0-3. So we're talking a pretty historical season. But here's the thing about Bowls. Last year, they lost 4 games in the regular season, went 6-4. Not a great year for them. They actually finished second to Bishop Kenny in their district. And then they went all the way to the state semifinals and nearly beat American Heritage down in Plantation. So it doesn't mean anything. Bowls can get hot, especially in the postseason. And I think we're going to start to see it right now as we're seeing after their big win over Trinity. They needed that win, and they got it. And speaking of Trinity Christian now, they're going to head to another team that's struggling in North Florida, the Columbia Tigers, 0-3 as well. Actually, that happened to them just a few years ago in the COVID season, 2020. They started 0-5, and guess what? They went all the way to the state semifinals. So it may not mean anything for Columbia, but now Columbia's got to get Trinity Christian this week in Lake City to try to get their first win of the season.
And it's a struggle. It's been a struggle for Columbia. You're absolutely right. I mean, Brian Allen's back. His second tenure there. As a second stint as the head coach, and after 2 years of Demetric Jackson, who's back at Fort White, who's got Fort White 4-0, by the way. Yeah, so Marty, when we're talking about 4-0 teams, mentioning by the way, who's 4-0 for the first time since 1985?
Some team in Tallahassee.
Leon.
Yeah.
I mean, it is very interesting. Tyrone McGriff, the head coach there in his second year. I mean, he's got Leon 4-0, and they beat Mosley 26-23. Last play of the game, scored the game-winning touchdown to win. So that's huge right there in Tallahassee. But I mean, when we were looking at everything here in North Florida, just across from Pensacola to Jacksonville, there's a lot of great football here and everything, and it's really, really interesting to see what is happening here. We're 4 weeks in, but it's really it's a battle. It's that some of the teams have still not separated themselves yet.
No, it's still early for that. And of course, we had some teams like Madison County who's only played 2 games and they've won the last 2 weeks, so that they're just getting going with their season. In fact, they're going to play Florida High this week at Madison. That's a big one. And we're going to have, by the way, coming up in about 15 minutes or so, we will have picks
Yes, the pick six.
I like that. I know the pick six. We'll have 6 games. We'll pick each week in North Florida, and we got a lot of good ones this week. But yeah, we're seeing a lot of good football, and of course, some of it's right where we live. We live in Alachua County in Gainesville, and right now you got the Buchholz Bobcats and the Hawthorne Hornets still unbeaten. The Phoenix State champ Hawthorne rallied to beat South Sumter last week. Big win for them at home.
I know that's huge right there. Cornelius Ingram, he's that coaching magic there over there at Hawthorne. And I'll tell you this, another team that's 4-0 in the region, Vanguard, who actually is going to play Buchholz this week. So that's
game of the week.
Yeah, that is a huge game right there.
Yeah.
Let's go on I-10 here, Marty, real quick. Let's go out of I-10. Choctaw makes a huge statement against Pine Forest, 35-14. I know Irish Bill will talk about that here in a little bit with him. But I'll tell you what, it really, really is something there to talk about what Choctaw's doing. Head coach Frank Beasley, I believe it's his 3rd year there now. So it's he had Choctaw to the regional finals last year, and now here you are beating Pine Forest, who you beaten, by the way, in the playoffs last year to get to the regional finals.
Yeah, remember Choctaw? Yeah, you're right. Last year they won a bunch of road games. They went over to St. Augustine and won. As you said, they beat Forest. Yeah, they had a big playoff run last year. We'll have Frank Beasley on at some point during the year. I would hope. He knows us, so yeah, I think he'll come in and talk with us. But yeah, he's doing a nice job at Choctaw. And Bill Hammel, Irish Bill, will have the Panhandle for us. So he's our man in the Panhandle, so we will definitely talk to him here in a few moments about Panhandle football. And we mentioned that Choctaw and Niceville game of the week, Florida High in Madison County, and we talked about Vanguard Buchholz. That'll be at Citizens Field coming up on Friday night. 2 undefeated teams, 2 4-0 teams there. But how about the rivalry game in St. Johns County? This one always good. Bartram Trail and St. Augustine again. And St. Augustine's undefeated. They're a really good team this year. I think Bartram has one loss, although it was to Mainland, who's one of the top ranked teams in the state, 4-0. But Bartram St. Augustine is always entertaining. It seems like it always comes down to the last play. And that game taking place this week.
Yeah, absolutely. We're trying to get Irish Bill in. He can't. He's having a technical difficulty, so we're going to get him working and get him here in a moment, hopefully before everything starts up. But looking at everything here, the Panhandle to Jacksonville, especially Panhandle football. People tend to forget about the Panhandle. There's some really good football out there, and I'll tell you another team that is actually one team that's struggling, one team that is saying that it's that is doing well that I did not see coming. The J Royals 4-0.
Right.
The Baker Gators 0-4.
That's backwards, really.
that is backwards.
We're used to having Baker, win or state titles, play for state titles. And runs Jay as a team that hasn't been 4-0, and I don't know ever. No, it's been a long time. So yeah, that's a good story as well as we go into Class 1R there with Jay and and Baker. And that's the thing about it too. I mean, while we are a statewide statewide program, we're going to have 3 other we have 3 other shows tonight as well. I don't, the Panhandle, it's tough to see all the teams over there. So whenever the 1R championship happens, like last year when Hawthorne played Northview in Tallahassee, I mean, obviously I knew Hawthorne really well. I knew nothing about Northview, and I think that's that's why we need folks on here to tell us about the Panhandle, like Irish Bill, because they keep up with it, and I'm set in this area, so I'm looking forward to what he has to say about his Navarre team, which he does the games for on YouTube, and always a good team there, but they're struggling a little bit this year. They were. They're back to 500 now, I believe.
No, absolutely, and everything. And hello, Michael Parsons joining us, and actually now we're going to take a quick water break here, real quick, about a 1 minute. Water break. We're going to get Irish Bill on. We see Irish sitting there ready to go. We got him in the queue. We're going to do that, and we're going to take a quick water break, and we'll be right back here on the North Florida Blitz, right here on the 4HSfootball.com social media platforms here. We'll be right back right after this.
Sorry, I'll have to. All right, welcome back. That we call that the water break, or little break there to give us some time. And we have the Blitz Lines already, and coming up the pick six. Yeah, everything's football, related here.
Yes, it is.
But right now, it's time, as we call it, the interview each show. And for the first time here on the North Florida Blitz, our first guest, and I think this is appropriate. It's Irish Bill Hammel, and I think a perfect first guest to have on this show. Hey, how are you doing, Irish Bill?
I couldn't be any better. It's football season in the state of Florida.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, it's definitely an interesting season so far. Only 4 weeks in, but I'll tell you what we've got going on here in the Sunshine State, especially in your region, Irish Bill. I mean, there's some interesting storylines. I mean, you're the voice of the Navarre Raiders as well, and I know one of the first things I have to really, talk about is I know that Navarre's kind of been struggling a little bit, even though Jay Walls did get his 200th win, by the way, career 200th win this past week against Tate. That game was a struggle right there. When I saw the score, I was like, oh my goodness. I'm like, Tate must be much improved for that score to be, it's like, I believe 45-42, I want to say, Irish Bill.
That was correct, but you got to look at their schedule to start. A very tough Pensacola Catholic team, off to an undefeated start. Pine Forest, even though they had kind of a setback last week against Choctaw, always a worthy opponent. But last week's game was back and forth, and it took a Tyrell Marshall field goal block at the end of the game to keep it from going overtime.
Wow.
Yeah, that's something. And Irish Bill, how many years have you been working Navarre football now?
This is actually my 15th year. I got started with Panhandle Sports Broadcasting with the late Bill Brownell.
Yeah, I know him well. I knew him well too, yes.
And then he introduced me to Robert Williamson with JockJive.com, and Robert and I became really solid friends till about 5 years ago. I split away from Robert out on my own.
Yeah. I met Irish Bill at those summer league baseball tournaments and through the state finals. And those people he mentioned, I worked for Bill and worked for Robert many summers. So yeah, that's good to hear that. Well, and speaking of Navarre, Jay Walls is a coach that spent some time over here at Swanee, but man, he has really turned that Navarre program into really a powerhouse through the years.
He sure has, but he's been fortunate to have some pretty darn good talent along the way with Jordan Leggett, Michael Carter, Dante Wright, just to name a few. And he's got another good one in the queue at running back, Connor Matthews.
Did you see any of the Hard Knocks? Michael Carter was all over that. He was pretty prominent in that Hard Knocks show with the Jets.
Well, one thing with Michael, he knows where he stands. He knows that Cook has been in the league a lot longer than he has. So he's got to kind of stay back in the shadows just a little bit. And when he gets his opportunity, I'm sure that he will perform.
Yeah, he's a lot younger than Dalvin too. I think he'll get his chance there with the Jets.
Definitely.
But yeah, Michael Carter, a name that went to North Carolina, came from Navarre and had himself a really good college career now in the NFL with the Jets. So another success story coming there from Navarre.
Yeah, he was the 6A player of the year his senior year, and they made it to the state semifinals before they got knocked out by a good Lake Gibson team.
Right.
No, absolutely. And Irish Bill, you're not just, following Navarre football, obviously the entire Panhandle. I mean, we were just mentioning that in the Blitz Lines is talking about Choctaw's dominant performance over Pine Forest. I knew that it's a huge right there. Pine Forest started out, season 3-0. Choctaw had kind of had a game struggle there early on against Pace, but Choctaw has come out. I mean, they came out and flexed a muscle against Pine Forest. And I mean, I always felt like, what we saw last year in the playoffs from Choctaw was going to end up resulting, that Choctaw team was going to be a strong team this year. And sure enough, that opening district of district play, it's right there.
Gosh, but you got to look at Pine Forest lost their Mr. Everything quarterback, Tierra Wilson, the last 2 years. So they moved over to Navarre transfer James Clark this year. So it's been a little bit of a tough transition to Clark, but I'm sure that he'll get it going before the end of the year.
No, absolutely.
I like to ask this question too. What do you think? We call it the transfer portal, but really, kind of jokingly, but it really is. I mean, what do you think about how, really you couldn't pretty much move around and play anywhere, it seems like now in high school sports?
Well, I'm not a big fan of it, but you know what? It's not about me. It's about the players.
Right.
And wherever they feel comfortable playing. Our state was the one that got it started with the legislation. So they opened up the doors, and we gotta walk through the door with them.
Yeah, between that and between the NIL in college now, a lot of things have changed in high school and college football, it seems.
That's for sure. We lost 5 starters off of Navarre, so that there went a lot of our depth going into this season. So that may be a little bit of the reason for our slow start coming into 23.
And with that, Irish Bill, I'm going to transition here into Class 1R football, which is a very dominant classification in terms of Panhandle football outside of the bigger teams. And we mentioned it earlier. I think I guess let me get your take first. Is who is the star going to be? Who's going to be the star Class 1R football Panhandle this year? Because it's definitely does not look like it's Northview right now, despite the fact they just finally picked up their first win of the season on Friday night.
Well, I think we got an independent up here that's a new school that's doing pretty well, the Destin Sharks. But I think the 1R right now, Jay off to a 4-0 start, and they actually won the I-4 war last week against Baker, who's really struggling.
I was wondering if you were going to mention Jay because that was the school that we had talked about, and sure enough, I'm really stunned. 4-0 Jay. I mean, Baker. I think when you look at the opposite side, it's stunning to see Baker at 4.
Most definitely, but they lost a lot, especially everything. Caleb Wagner, who's off playing the college ball right now up in Southern Illinois, but they got a young team, and they won't be down for long.
So absolutely,
Yeah, well, so Irish Bill, as you look towards, we're already near the halfway point of the season. Who do you see kind of coming out of that area this year? I know you mentioned how Jay's playing, but who do you see maybe coming out of the Panhandle and making a run to a possible state title in any of the classifications really at this point?
Well, out of ours, I mean, Niceville's always tough. You can't count them out, but they did lose their starting quarterback.
Right.
But they still have a strong defense. Pine Forest, you can never count Pine Forest out. Frank Beasley and Choctaw, they got it all going with probably 2 Division I players with Jesse Winslet at quarterback and Cole Tabb. That kid is a stud at running back. But never count out Navarre. But our district is pretty much up for grabs. You got a much improved pace team that's going to be really strong this year. And last week, Gulf Breweries put up 73 on Milton. Who would have thought that?
Wow.
I mean that is just it's absolutely this crazy to see that number 73. I mean, I know there's been some games with some wild wicked numbers here across the state, 60, 70 points this year, and it's just been how can you manage to score that amount of points? But then again, it's when each team just keeps trading barbs, at the end of the day, it's going to be wild like that.
But the 2 teams that have really stood out to me from here to the Big Bend, I mean, you got Mariana off to a 4-0 start. I mean, what a job that they're doing over there. I mean, you got Jack Glover doing a heck of a job over there. Mariana and Leon 4-0. No one thought that was going to happen.
Hasn't happened since 1985. Yeah, it's been a few years. Leon was that good. And yeah, those 2 are. Mariana's had some good seasons as well. You're right. That's a team that you usually can count on to have to be pretty good. But yeah, Leon's been a big surprise at Tallahassee. We normally talk about Godby and Lincoln and that area, but this year it's Leon so far.
Yeah, definitely.
Go ahead.
Another team out of the Panhandle I like is the Escambia Gators. Coach Mike Bennett has been around these parts forever. He's got an excellent quarterback with Anthony Hall, who's only a junior this year. They're a pretty scary team. I think that district will come down to Escambia and Choctaw.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. Well, Irish Bill, you're a man of the Panhandle. That's what I said because you're getting me educated right now on what's going on over there. So,
and Irish Bill,
I got my cheat sheet here with every single thing. From here all the way over to Madison County. I try to cover all of them, but I only have so much time in a day.
No, absolutely. And Irish Bill, real quick, tell people where they can follow you and find you at every Friday night, and especially and during the week too.
Well, in fact, I'm just getting ready to head up to Culver's for Irish Bill's Twist on Sports at 8 o'clock Central. Tomorrow night, I got a new show that's in week 5. at Buffalo Wild Wings. It's the Buffalo Wild Wings Coaches Show with Coach Jay Walls. And then Friday night, it's IrishBillSports.com or Irish Bill Sports Live on YouTube.
Awesome. Well,
busy man.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, my wife at the beginning of the season goes, "It's time to become a football widow again, huh?"
Right. I'll see you in December, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right, Irish Bill. Good talking to you as always. We'll be sure to have you on again as the season goes on and talk more Panhandle football as we get close to the playoffs. But we appreciate you being our first guest, North Florida Blitz.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate you considering me to come on. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. All right, take care, Irish Bill. And here we are, Marty. We are going into here with this talking rankings now. I mean,
these are the weekly rankings from Florida HS football.
.com, and especially teams in the region. Let's talk about some of the teams in the region, especially go Class 1R real quick as we hit here. The new rankings been posted on FloridaHSFootball.com as we went live, and I'll tell you what, looking at some of the teams in the thing, Holmes County is one of them. Holmes County, Holmes County jumped to 5th after being beating Sneeds this week, and Sneeds now 6. And then of course we've got Madison County out there at number 7, and then Chipley sitting there at 9, and of course Fort White sitting there at 10. And a lot of teams, especially then we'll also look and go down to the SSA 11-man real quick, and some teams of note in that. Oak Hall got them right there. Impact Christian out of Jacksonville. That's where Bobby Ramsey is at now, coaching that team there. You know, the Bobby Ramsey of fame of Derrick Henry from Yulee.
Henry, and then at Mandarin.
Yes.
As well. Yeah.
Yes, and then Christ Church Academy sitting there at number 10. Of course, as we drift up, Class 1S, that's where North Florida Christian is sitting there at number 5. Got sitting there and taking a look at a couple other teams in the region here that have been 2S. We got Florida High sitting there at 3. And then we've got sitting here looking at Pensacola Catholic at 7, Swanee at 8, and then Walton sitting there at 10. And, of course, Bradford at number 2 right away. Bradford, the Tornadoes, are doing really well here as well. And, I can tell you it's a right there. So
yeah, giving up 7 points in 4 games, and that was to Middleburg.
Yeah, my alma mater.
That's right.
And of course, Choctaw moves up to number 5, and Threekin sitting there at number 7. And of course, Pine Forest falls to 9 after that loss. And of course, sitting at number 2 is St. Augustine. So right there, we got St. Augustine.
And again, they get Bartram Trail this week. So a big test for St. Augustine. It's already bowls and already beaten Brunswick, Georgia. So yeah, they've had a pretty good schedule again the year.
No, absolutely. Bartram Trail sitting there at number 6, and of course, looking at a couple other teams right there. Niceville sitting there at 9 right now, and of course, Buchholz at number 4 and 4S. Looking at some of the teams in 1M, Trinity Christian sitting there at number 4 after losing to Bowles there, and then University Christian sitting there at number 6. And teams out of Jacksonville right now, Ed White at 10 and 2M, Rains at 8 and there. And then, of course, right now it's the struggle is where's Bowles not to be ranked right now, even though they're in the bubble.
I would consider them, even though they're 1 and 3 with their schedule, they could be could definitely be in the receiving votes category.
No, absolutely. And of course, sitting there at Class 4M, the Mandarin sitting there at number 2. And of course, Mandarin's ranked in the top 25. Of course, St. Augustine, Buchholz as well. So they can get all the rankings on FloridaHSFootball.com. So
that's right. And Buchholz has got that big game with Vanguard this week. So they'll get tested as well. And yeah, Mandarin having a big year. If you notice Carson Beck playing for Georgia now, of course, he's a Mandarin grad, led into a state title, and finally getting a chance as the Bulldogs quarterbacks. And Mandarin having a pretty good year themselves.
No, absolutely.
Well, now we are going to move on to something we're going to have every week as well, and this is going to be fun. The Pick 6, where we'll have games that we will choose and pick our winner from around North Florida, the Panhandle, Northeast, and North Central Florida with this cool music playing over us.
Yes.
That Josh has found. And so we will start with, in the Panhandle, as we just said, Choctaw at Niceville.
Well, you know what? I think Niceville is struggling. They barely beat Childs this past week. Marty, I am in the camp of I'm going Choctaw on this one. I think Choctaw just is. They've got the firepower. They've got Cole Tabb, the running back, Jesse Winslet, who's a top-notch quarterback, and I think that's going to be the deciding factor. And I'd take Choctaw on that one.
When in doubt, go with Frank Beasley. And,
yes,
I'm going to take Choctaw as well. I think that they're for real. Niceville, as you said, always tough at home, but I think Choctaw can get that win on the road. It's a tough place to win. They can do it. Right.
Yeah, the next one on the list, Florida High at Madison County.
Well, I think Madison County's starting to round into form. I mean, they've played 2 weeks now. They beat the team from Georgia. Last week, they hammered Columbia. I like them at home against Florida High. I think it's just playing at the Boot Hill is for the first time this year, they're going to be ready to go.
Yeah, and especially after all the effects of Hurricane Idalia that have impacted Madison and everything, I'm going to go with the big upset here, Madison County taking down Florida High.
Is that a big upset? Okay,
I think it will be because especially since Florida High, coming off a state runner-up finish last year.
Well, we agree on the first two. All right, well, we will now look at North Central Florida game we mentioned earlier. Columbia trying to get their first win of the year at home, 0-3. Against Trinity Christian, who's 2-2 after the loss to Bowles last week. This game in Lake City.
This I'll tell you what. I mean, just to be honest with you, this is gonna. I mean, Trinity Christian struggled against Bowles here, but Columbia struggled against Madison County. They have struggled against DeLand. They have struggled against Buchholz. I just don't know what's going on with the Tigers. I have got to take Trinity Christian here in this one.
I don't see Trinity Christian losing 2 in a row, really, and even though it's on the road. They've handled Columbia through the years. I would take the Concords as well, and Verlon, Dormany to go to 3-2.
All right. Well, we're still in the same camp here with everything of our picks so far. But the next one, Vanguard and Buchholz, battle of 2 4-0 teams. Somebody is taking their first loss this coming week.
This game came down to the last play last year. Buchholz kicked a field goal to win by 3 down at Booster Stadium in Ocala. It could be that way again this week. Both teams are 4-0. Both teams have been rolling through their schedules, and I'm going to go with Buchholz at home at Citizens Field. I'll take the Bobcats to go to 5-0. Not going to be easy, but I think Buchholz will win once again.
After seeing what Buchholz did last week, and of course, the name slips my mind of the running back that is injured
Quentin Cutler.
Quentin Cutler.
Right.
After seeing that and then putting Miles Graham, who is the 5-star linebacker commit for Florida University of Florida, and him rushing for over 200 yards and 3 touchdowns, including one that went for 96 yards. I'm going with Buchholz in this one. I think Buchholz is the one that's going to come out of winner, especially since this is at home and it's a homecoming game for them, by the way.
Right, I agree. And now 4 for 4 we are. Now I think we're going to have a difference in this one. Bartram Trail at St. Augustine. Go ahead.
You know what? St. Augustine has more talent this year than I believe what Bartram Trail's got. I mean, especially with their quarterback, and they've got some stud wide receivers too. I'm going with the Yellow Jackets in this one, especially since this is at home at Foots Brumley.
Yeah, you're right. Remember this first 10 years of this rivalry, St. Augustine won every year. But Bartram Trail, I believe, has won 5 out of 6. I don't think Bartram Trail is not as talented as you think. I mean, they nearly beat Mainland. That game came down to the end. That's their only loss. I know the game's at St. Augustine, but yes, we are going to have a difference. I'm taking Bartram Trail to win this game.
All right, there's our first difference right there in the picks here on the pick 6. And our last game is Jacksonville 1, 2 Duval County schools, 2 of the top teams in Duval County Public Schools going at it. Ed White at Riverside.
Teams on the west side of Jacksonville. That's right. And well, I tell you what, give me the team in the backyard with the field turf. The Riverside Generals only have 1 loss. That was to Mandarin. Give me the Generals at home against their rival, the Commanders of Ed White.
Well, I think Ed White does sometimes have the number on Riverside, and sometimes some teams find it easier to go play in the backyard than others. And I'm going to go against this one, and I'm going to take Ed White here.
All right, there we go.
Yes, indeed. And looking at the comments here that we've got here, Michael Parsons says Vanguard needs to play 4 quarters for once, and you know what? That I say is going to be the case there. We will to address that comment here, because I think Vanguard does definitely need to play 4 quarters in order to beat Buchholz, and that's going to be a tough outing, especially when you have got Trace Johnson, who's sitting there, the sophomore quarterback, who actually played a much better game than he did against Eastside, who they won, by the way, 35-0.
Yeah, he threw 3 picks in that game.
Yeah, but in this situation, I mean, you've got Miles Graham sitting there. Miles Graham's going to be playing both ways most likely. I mean, you've got to prepare. You've got to be ready for him, and that's the thing. Vanguard, Vanguard does have Frank Gaskin the third, so that should be.
Do. And Vanguard's really talented. I mean, we've known Edwin Farmer a long time. Really good coach, but very talented team. They're going to get Buchholz fit. They kind of are a team that plays to the level of their competition at times, and they'll be ready for Buchholz. And I think that they'll play Buchholz to the very end, even if they don't win that game.
No, absolutely. And, it really, really is interesting to see what's going to happen here. But I can tell you this, looking at it, it's definitely something that, looking at these games, we agree on 4, different on 2, and we will see what happens. We look at it next week, but Marty, it's definitely will be fun to watch, see what happens here across the North Florida corridor.
Yeah, it will be, and a lot of big games this week. And boy, tell you what, we did a lot there in 30 minutes. That flew by, man. All kinds of stuff. You heard from Irish Bill Hammel. We gave you the Blitz Lines, the headlines for each week, and gave you rankings and the pick 6. And for now, just some final thoughts on this week's game.
I think that, the 6 games we picked on, these are going to be high quality matchups. These are matchups worth going to. So they're worth the price of admission. I'd say go get a ticket and go watch some high school football, especially in some of the big towns and some of the small towns.
Right, I agree with you, and we look forward to having a big week of football this Friday night in Florida, North Central Florida, and then the Panhandle as well.
No, absolutely.
All right. Well, I think that's going to do it. Our first edition of the North Florida Blitz. We have a few others coming up. If you're going to watch tonight on Facebook or YouTube, as we will bring you as well the Central Florida Blitz, the Gulf Coast Blitz, and the South Florida Blitz coming up. But we appreciate everyone watching the North Florida Blitz, the first edition, and we will talk to you again every Tuesday, 7:30, with a look at North Florida high school football. That's it for Joshua Wilson. I'm Marty Pallman. We'll talk to you again coming up next Tuesday.